Hello viewers from wherever you're watching us from. You're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting live from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Aliou Cisse, and we are back for a special edition as Senegal on Sunday went to the polls to elect, their fifth president, and in this case, Diomaye Faye is being declared as the winner of that polls after getting over 50% of the votes cast. We are yet to receive the official results by the council responsible for the elections, but obviously we know he's the winner. After getting the unofficial results, as we have seen. Even the candidates have already, called to congratulate him on his victory, including the president of the Gambia, President Adama Barrow. And joining me tonight to discuss the outcome of these elections and what does it mean for the future of Senegal, I am joined on the program by Mr. Ade Drame, head of QTV News. Mr. Drame, good to have you on the program once again.
Pleasure always to do this sort of program. Always a pleasure.
Also, we have Mr. Moch, who needs no introduction. Mr. Moch, good to have you on the program.
I'm glad to be here, Ale.
And of course, a familiar face now on QTV, Mr. Almame Tal, a lawyer and a politician. Mr. Tal, good to have you on the program.
Thank you for the invitation.
And just before we get to the build-up to the elections with all what has happened, I will just start with all of you. What's your take on the outcome of the elections? Mr. Ade, Mr. Moch, and Mr. Tal.
Well, I'll start by saying that in West Africa, we never have earthquakes, but I think we just had one. Yeah. This has been a political earthquake. Most people did not see this coming. There had been signs, but I decided before I came on this program to read some of the newspapers from around the world 2 days before. And most of them predicted there would be a runoff. Okay. We didn't come close to any such thing. So yes, I think a political earthquake has definitely happened here.
Mr. Boch, is it a political earthquake for you?
Absolutely. Although perhaps I will use slightly different terms. To me, it's been like a long drama. So this is like the compelling sort of epilogue to this long suspense. First, it was, would you run for third term or not? Okay. Second, it was to postpone or not. So they kept pushing him. So when postponement became inevitable, then when? And then afterwards, who? That's it, as you said. Everybody thought that it was going to, go to a runoff. It didn't. Refreshing, some of us thought surely Senegal wouldn't dare do that. 44-year-old versus the 62, 63-year-old experienced as foreign minister, prime minister, knows the ropes of government compared to this novice. But Senegal said, hey, we're in the mood for the radical stuff.
And Mr. Tal, Diomaye Faye, who just turned 44 yesterday.
Yes, I think a lot is being made out of that. Okay. But quite honestly, this is actually how all revolutions are led. They are led by relatively young men and women. Sadauda became president at 41, prime minister in 1965. The great MLK, died before his 40th birthday. So change is synonymous with the young generation. And I think it is a change in the making, like Mr. Mboj has said. For quite a while, this is a whole generational change and a new kind of politics where the imperial leader is no longer the only factor that can bring about change. Because whatever anybody says, I think Macky Sall saw Sonko that this guy, if I don't stop him, he is going to succeed me. And maybe that is not something he wanted. But I just want to also add my voice that it is a new day in Senegal, and it is a very important day for the West Africa sub-region, because we have had and a crisis of legitimacy was creeping in. Senegalese have demonstrated to everybody that change can come through democratic processes, through the ballot box, within 10 days out of prison, to have this kind of change, change, profound, seismic change. I think we have to learn lessons from them, because even the opposition in Senegal were quite determined to safeguard their democracy, and were very, very accommodating. Someone like the former Prime Minister, Aminata Toure, Mimi.
Mimi, yeah.
She said, I was denied my candidacy, but I want this change to happen so that we can sort out our furniture, so that we can sort out a future that works. So really, it's a very, very good day in West Africa, especially in Senegambia. Those of us who know this name, Faye and Basiru, these are names that Gambians also have. So we take pride in that. And
Mr. Ade, you said, I mean, before the elections, I mean, you were following keenly, I mean, what is happening, being reported in the media. I mean, many, like you said, predicted that there will be a runoff. Why and where did it all change?
It's amazing, because I think one of the things that it has shown is that there's an adage I used to use, which I'll have to dump now, is that not everybody who sings and dances votes, and not everybody who votes sings and dances. And I had used other elections where people had had huge crowds turn out for them, in Uganda, Bobi Wine, Peter Obi in Nigeria. Peter Obi was going to sweep away the old guard with the help of the youth in Nigeria. They had the best social media platform of anybody in terms of messaging and so on. And the same with Bobi Wine in Uganda. They failed dismally. And I thought that this might be an echo of that, because, you know, we saw the riots, we saw the people taking to the streets on behalf of Sonko, Jomai Faye, and I thought that doesn't always translate into votes, but this time it did. So, as I said, I'll probably have to stop saying that now, because really and truly, I think when you listen to the horse trading, then it's instructive for us to say that, well, perhaps somebody can buck the trend. And it's also interesting to say that when PDS, in the form of Abdoulaye Wade, gave his blessing, the day before he went to vote, Jomai Faye went to see him and thank him. And you know, the pictures are all on social media. We even have them. And that was significant, because for all that Karim Wade could not stand, PDS remains a party with considerable support. And for the old man to come out and tell his supporters, throw your weight and throw your votes behind Jomai Faye, that was quite significant. And I think that was shown by Jomai Faye, the last person he saw the night before the election. He was the old man.
And for you, Mr. Mboch, what do you think was the game changer in this whole thing? I mean, Jomai just, left the president a week before the polls, and he came out stronger. Sonko by his side, the kingmaker himself. What do you think was the key game changer in this whole thing?
I think it was Sonko actually who laid the foundation. I think this movement, it's more than a political party, I suspect. It really has tapped into certain grievances. And there was one political scientist who calls it sort of the power of dégagismo, a certain clearance, rejection of the current political class. So that was the movement, that mood. I think they tapped into that, and they were saying all the right things. I think in Francophone Africa now, the idea of abandoning CFA franc is gaining traction. Sure. We've seen it in other areas. So they've been saying the right things, tapping into people's hopes.
And let's see
20% what? Unemployment, 39% poverty rate, stuff like that. So they tapped into that, I feel.
Yes, and in terms of the CFA franc, which again he's made very much him and Sonko, it'll be interesting to see whether they do dump it. Because for all the ones who've made the noise about doing so, none of them have done so as yet. Yeah. So now he's not come to power via the bullet or the gun, it's the ballot. And you have legitimacy. So if you're going to dump it, you have to do it. Otherwise, your credibility starts to suffer straight away.
But something else happened, Almami, before you come in here, and afterwards, when they interviewed Sonko, he sort of backtracked a bit.
Well, I was going to say,
and said that he was going to collaborate, work with other people in the Francophone zone, as it were, and see what they can do. But he's not as radical as
he sounded in the campaign trail.
As he sounded in the campaign.
And Almami, to you, I mean, for many, I mean, they're like, Jomai, just 44 years, I mean, in terms of experience when it comes to, governance, I mean, yes, he has never been a minister or a statesman. Are you doubtful about his experience? Do you think this will in any way affect him?
Now, often it is said that nobody really prepares for a president.
Exactly.
Because events always overtake you, and events also dictate how you behave. And I was just saying earlier, this fixation on the age, I think for me is a non-issue. The fact of the matter is that Pastef, that is Jomai and Sonko, they have presented to the Senegalese people a vision, a compelling vision. So this was, I mean, the incumbent was not a candidate. So it was two competing visions of where Senegal can go.
So it wasn't about even a party, Pastef in this case. It was more about a project that they have presented to the Senegalese. Even though Pastef was banned, yet the project was
still alive.
Yes, and like Mr. Moj has said, this is a movement that has been able to galvanize the most progressive issues on its agenda and went to the biggest vote bank, the youth vote. More than 60% of the electorate is of the youth generation. So it is very important for all of us to not only wish President Faye all the best, but for him also to realize, which I think he has started showing it, that he will lead with humility, which I think is extremely important when you don't have the experience or the gray hairs. But there is a lot of expertise and experience in Senegalese politics. The hope is that he taps into that and bring them into the fold and have a more inclusive kind of government. Senegal is going to get oil and gas exploration this year, I mean, starting to produce. There are a lot of good things that have been built on from the SOPI alliance of President Wade and then the Senegal emergence of President Macky Sall. So there is bound to be continuity. I just want to comment a little bit on this CFA issue. The CFA is a legal construct and is legal tender. Whatever the colonial provenance of it, it has served this region for almost 80 years. It has been in circulation for a very wide section of West Africa. We have been trying to have an alternative common currency for the last 25 years in West Africa. How much money has been expended on the ECO?
We are not talking about 2027.
Yes, we still haven't seen it. So currencies and legal constructs like this are things that you can sit down as lawyers and negotiate the terms. And now, in any case, people are talking about cryptocurrency and digital money. You know, everybody knows that these are concepts that you can sit down and agree that this is the value we are going to give this. In any case, Europe, where France is a part of, they now use a euro. It's been in circulation for 22 years. So these are all things that I don't really think they should get into it without properly scrutinizing.
So it's like you're saying it's not going to be easy.
I'm not saying, I don't know even if it is wise or is desirable. What you need, I mean, their plank is very clear. If you cut down corruption, if you reinvent or come up with a new theory of government, Senegal may become the fastest growing economy based on the opportunities and the resources that are already inside of Senegal. It's just a question of managing it and making sure that it is fairer, the distribution is fairer, and more people have a piece of the cake.
I watched his maiden media engagement yesterday night, I mean, Jomai Faye, and he said, I mean, by electing me, the Senegalese people have chosen to break with the past. I promise to govern with humility and transparency. Mr. Moj, Mr. Adi, hopes are quite high as far as Jomai is concerned. What message, or do you think they should manage the expectation? Should they expect much? It was 2 or 3 years.
I'm very old. I've seen it all before. And I think people have to keep their expectations in check.
Okay.
And Almami, my friend, has touched on some of it. The CFA franc, for example, is easy rhetoric in an age of anti-French feeling to say that we're going to dump this relic of colonial rule, but replace it with what? And on what is the basis that is going to be anchored? I'm not saying it's good that they should retain it, but believe me, getting rid of it is not going to be a simple task of just saying we're out of it now. And that's something I think they have to realize, and I think that's something that the people who have kind of been cheering them on have to realize. But the thing quickly about age, I think we can't get away from the obsession with age, because in Africa we're not used to people of this age becoming president. He's currently the youngest president in Africa, so we can't avoid it. It's unavoidable. But also about experience, we're in the Gambia. What political experience did Barrow have before he became our president?
Even Jammeh, when he was
and this is it. So experience you can acquire, and as again Al-Mami said, if you use wise heads and older and wiser heads around you, they can help you. But, and there's a big but, he has now jumped into bed with Abdoulaye Wade. Abdoulaye Wade, in the last years of his presidency, was riddled with corruption and allegations of corruption. If you are seen that that is your partner just because you wanted to get elected, trust me, trouble lies ahead. Because when somebody gives you that, they want something in return. What will they get in return?
Like I said, I mean, okay, Mr. Mo, you can
and that's exactly it. Because throughout the campaign, they sort of incarnate themselves as a counter-image to the traditional kleptocratic,
insults with PDS.
Absolutely.
I read one of their press releases about PDS on a previous program. There was no diplomatic language about it. When PDS said that they should come together, they absolutely lambasted them and essentially told them to go to hell. And now, on the eve of the election, you go and bow down in front of the old man.
And one interesting advice on these things is like, start fast, but craft a message of patience. That's what advice I will say.
And so people can manage expectations.
Expectations must be managed. And I mean, it's a very human thing to have high expectations, especially of so young and so successful so early. However, Senegal, I think some of us just don't understand the dynamism and the sheer desire for excellence that is widespread amongst the community. Because individual effort there always pays. And we have seen so many successful projects take off there at an individual basis. I'm sure Ade and Mr. Mboj and probably you, Mr. Sise, would have heard about this. So it's a society of strivers.
Sure.
There is a lot of dynamism there, and they have this high cultural confidence. Now, with a very committed and humble leadership, I think really Senegal can match, because a lot of work has been done since 2000. I mean, and I think that is the context also we should not minimize. I mean, President Wade disgraced himself by insisting on going for a third term. President Macky Sall has also is going to leave office with a big stain on his reputation and even successes. But this expectation that people have is based on reality, that Senegalese are hardworking, they are innovative, and they are going to make the best of all the resources and all the opportunities that they have. And this is a movement. It's not really about President Faye or even Sonko alone. Senegal has a very deep bench of really, really dynamic leaders, and we are also missing that out in the equation. If we bring that into the equation, we should also start recognizing how strong the institutions of Senegal have become. This flowering of the democracy is because they have strong institutions. Of course, some institutions were weaponized against the opposition. These are the kind of reforms that President Faye should, like he said, do very quickly, because the police and the judicial system really need some urgent attention. But the economic challenges and the opportunities, I think together as a united force, the Senegalese are going to prevail. I have no doubt about it.
Isn't this it really? That was how I thought about it, that perhaps Macky Sall might have soiled himself, but Senegal really proved his democratic credentials. Because remember the papers all over the place. I mean, some of them really were beginning to talk about the obituary of democracy in Senegal.
Yes,
all these alarmist stories about it. When it was really a country going through one of those political convulsions that we see over time in history, all over the place, all over the world. The US just went through one. They're still going through one.
Well, this is it. They happen all the time. And Macky Sall, I mean, for me, we talk about him kind of spoiling his legacy. I thought the opportunity that the BBC gave him was a missed opportunity by him. Because they said, do you have anything to apologize for over annulling or trying to postpone the election? No. He said, no, I have nothing to apologize for. He said it was the National Assembly that requested. That is not true. I was going to say stronger words. Because we watched his address. And in that address, the words he said were, the same section of the Constitution which allows me to call an election, allows me to postpone an election. Were his very words. Nobody put words in his mouth. So for you to say it was the Assembly that instructed you to do so, that it was not, because you yourself did not say so.
Absolutely.
Let's now, like I said earlier on, I mean, since the results were announced and Diomaye Faye being confirmed as the fifth president of Senegal, I mean, world leaders have been congratulating Mr. Faye, of course, including President Adama Barrow, who in a post on his Barrow post said, I congratulate Mr. Bassirou Diomaye Faye for a victorious election and commend the people of the Republic of Senegal for the peaceful conduct of the presidential election. I am optimistic that the cordial relationship between the Gambia and Senegal will be further strengthened and enhanced under the leadership of President-elect Bassirou Diomaye Faye. We've also seen another statement from ECOWAS, I mean, signed by Dr. Oumar Aliou Touré. I mean, it's in French. I mean, it says, but I'll just try to get what actually the president is trying to say in this letter. It says, in the names of the ECOWAS institutions, I am honored to extend my sincere felicitation on your election as the President of Senegal. I greet the people of Senegal and the Senegalese institutions for, of course, the serenity and, of course, the maturity demonstrated, I mean, during this election. And, of course, you know, he said, on my behalf, I mean, I would like to assure you of our engagement as ECOWAS, I mean, for the work and interests of Senegal, the region, and Africa as a whole. I mean, so that is a statement from ECOWAS Commission. Like I said, I mean, Amadou Ba, who was the ruling candidate, has also, of course, I mean, sent a message of felicitation to Mr. Diomaye Faye, and it says, in view of the trends of the presidential election results and awaiting the official proclamation, like I said earlier on, I mean, we are still waiting for the official announcement. I congratulate President Bassirou Diomaye Faye for his victory from the first round. I pray to the Almighty to give him the necessary energy and strength to assume this high position as the head of our country. I wish him much success and success for the well-being of the Senegalese people.
And you see, these guys don't have press officers who can correct them. These press officers should say, you don't say president, you say president-elect.
President-elect, exactly. And of course, Macky Sall also tweeted, and he said, I salute the smooth running of the presidential election of March 24, 2024, and I congratulate the winner, Mr. Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who the trend saw as the winner. It is victory of Senegalese democracy.
I think that is very important to say that the smooth running of it and the victory of the people, the victory of Senegalese democracy. I think this is what we should not miss out of. And if there is any takeaway in this whole process, it is extremely important for all of us in West Africa and in Africa at large, that where you have a term limit and you have proper succession planning, it's possible for democratic transfer of power and a peaceful one to happen. This happened in Ghana from 92. It happened in Nigeria from 99. So the formula is there. I think the people's victory, the working of democratic institutions, because look at the electorate, about 7 million. And no incident was reported.
Yes, 7.3 million registered voters.
No incident reported in a country as big as Senegal. So really, it shows you the importance of institutions. And really, in Africa now, we should accept that if you have these elements arranged, like they had in Ghana, like they have in Nigeria, two of the major West African countries, you have a chance of not having coup d'etats every other day or, unrest every other day. But this whole imperial presidency that most African countries are doing, where almost all the powers of the state are concentrated in the presidency, it creates this kind of tension. Because for the last 2 years, Macky Sall has been involved in this fight with Sonko. Yeah. And eventually said, I'm not going to be a candidate. But he had a chosen successor. And it was clear to everyone that chosen successor is not going to cut it. So as a party leader, if he had an effective succession plan and started much earlier, all this controversy, all this loss of life, all these lost opportunities that Senegal had been living through for the last 2 years would have been avoided.
And, interesting. And Mr. Ari, I mean, I know you want to comment on that, but maybe you can later also comment. Like I said, I mean, President Barrow has also sent a message to Jammeh and, of course, even the president of Guinea-Bissau. You talk to so many people that are like, oh, Macky was President Barrow's friend. Macky is no more there. Now it's Jammeh Faye. When it comes to foreign policy, do you think this will in any way affect the relationship between Gambia and Senegal, government to government? Because some people, they have this notion, oh, Macky is no more there, so
the short
what next?
The short answer, and we had this discussion, is no.
Exactly.
Gambia and Senegal always try and have cordial relations. The fact that geographically we are in the embrace of Senegal forces us to have cordial relations with Senegal. And so it matters not who the president is. There were, on the eve of the elections, some instances where, Jammeh Faye gave a press conference after he'd voted and made allegations that people were being bussed in from the Gambia to go and vote. Yeah. I hope he apologizes for that, because I don't think it was true. People can vote here if you're Senegalese. You don't need to be bussed in anywhere. So, but that aside, that's a minor thing. And I think, President Barrow will have cordial relations with Faye. I'm pretty sure of that. And it's in the interest of both countries that he does so. So, I don't think,
So much?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've had sort of two narratives for a while now, haven't we? Sort of like the two nations, one people. We have that when we discuss. But sometimes it's like next door enemy. These contradictions, no worse than what you see in families between siblings. that sort of thing. Yeah. So that's the kind of relationship we have, and it's going to continue. It really doesn't matter who is
diplomatically, it will continue.
Yes.
But this, on the market, it has really improved, because we haven't had that major incident of border closure like we used to have between Macky and Jammeh back then, Mr. Tal.
This is so. I think you hit the nail on the head. As you said, that nations have their interests. Of course, there is nobody who can account for personal chemistry. There is no doubt that President Barrow, His Excellency President Sall, had chemistry. But that also has history.
I was going to say. I'm glad you said it.
Remember when we were in crisis, when our own leader refused to go, it was President Macky Sall who galvanized the region and the UN, and the threat of using military force that got us out of this, out of our own predicament. So that kind of bond is very unique in history. And given the fact that we speak the same languages, Gambia and Senegal, that chemistry has to be there. But when it comes to affairs of state, I think personal animus or personal friendship must be put aside for the greater interest of the bilateral relationship. And during Jammeh time, even when Wad was there used to be tensions and border closures and things like that. But it's not only that. Some of the institutions in Senegal have a strategic interest in getting our relationship on balance. So really what we need to focus on is to clearly spell out our foreign policy posture towards Senegal, because it's our most important foreign policy strategic decision-making point. All the other accredited embassies to Gambia are in Senegal.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is extremely important for us.
As far back as actually the 70s, early 70s, President Jawara once complained to the Secretary General of the UN, Yutang, remember who was in. So this has been the relationship really ever since.
Indeed.
So
and in 81, they foiled a coup d'etat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this year, of course, is on sadly the 30th anniversary of the July 22nd coup that really set Gambia back in terms of its democratic progression. But the relationship, I think we should continually work on it, as our cousins and brothers on the other side should also, like Ade is saying, you don't make allegations about things that can hurt the relationship. We know in the midst of the political fray, you can say all kinds of things. But it is fundamental that Gambians also realize that this is not a broader relationship. We all have strategic interests, and we should always defend and fight for our strategic interests and the territorial integrity of the Gambia.
And there are forces that push against this. When we had the kind of impasse between the transport people, one of the leader of the Senegalese Transport Union gave what I thought was an extraordinary interview to QTV. He said, you know, at the level of the presidency, these people make these decisions about cross-border transportation. He said, but if it was left to us, he said, not a single Gambian truck would come into Senegal, and not a single Senegalese truck would come in. I mean, he was blunt. You know, he didn't sugarcoat it. He wasn't diplomatic or anything like that. And so those are some of the pressures that presidents have to deal with and manage at that level. As he said the presidents make these decisions between themselves. I mean, he meant country president, he didn't mean union presidents. And he said they force these honors. He was blunt. I remember watching it, I thought, wow, this guy is not holding back. So there are those pressures that they have to deal with. And as Almami rightly says, at presidential level, you realize that sort of relationship, that sort of thing needs to happen. It must happen. We're in ECOWAS. We talk about free movement, and you're telling me next door we can't move freely? It's a nonsense. You know, so, you know, these are the things that if the pressure comes from the unions, and let's not forget, unions can be very powerful. You know, in Guinea, one day after Mamadi Doumbouya took to the streets and said people were running out and congratulating me, the unions called a strike, a nationwide strike. If you saw it, you wouldn't believe. The whole of Guinea was like a ghost town. You know, so unions do have strength, and so leaders have to manage those positions, because if the unions think that he's not on their side, they could turn against him.
Mr. Moch, and earlier on, I mean, at the start of the program, Almami said, I mean, there's a lot, I mean, countries can learn from Senegal. I mean, what do you think is there that, you know, not only Gambia, but other countries as well can learn as far as that democracy is concerned?
The sheer resilience of the whole machinery of government. Here was the president. We saw that actually with Abdoulaye Wade. He tried to do stuff, but it just didn't work. People will tell you that really in Senegal now, democracy is a culture. It's not a slogan or anything like that. You know, the whole society, all strata, really imbued with this democratic culture. That is why all these presidents will really find it difficult.
Well, I was going to say, because for me, it was bent, but it was not broken.
No.
Because even you go back to Wade, but let's go to Macky Sall. This very election. It was the Constitutional Court that brushed aside his attempt to push back till November. So that showed you that these institutions can be strong and they rescued democracy in Senegal.
And finally, perhaps the military must learn from this as well. Societies, any political entities, once in a while they'll go through some turbulence. But you have to let the civilians solve it. That's how you learn democracy, by doing it. don't think that you are the answer and stepping in. I mean, it was funny when I read that some of these military men in power in some of these Sahel countries were congratulating them.
I know.
Isn't that a stinging refutation of this whole army taking over? Look at democracies doing it.
And they've all congratulated him.
Similar agenda.
Yeah,
you know, we'll get rid of the French,
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that. Similar agenda, democratically in there. It's a fantastic lesson.
Yeah, quite.
Interesting. And Almami, like you said, I mean, no one can undermine the role of Usman Sonko in this whole thing. He's a kingmaker. He is everything. I mean, he said he is Jomai and Jomai is Sonko. In fact, Jomai names one of his sons after Usman Sonko. In what capacity do you think Usman Sonko will fit in Jomai's government? Prime Minister or where?
I think there is no doubt, again, in our current political situation throughout Africa, to have a charismatic, purposeful leader who can bring the country together, more than Usman Sonko. Okay. Now, this role sometimes happen in history. This is the case with Mandela. He had so many comrades, and he was imprisoned with so many comrades, but his name stood out and was shining brighter than all the other stars of the ANC. That role, I think Usman is the best person to advise on what role he is going to play. Okay. Because there is this fear that because of that powerful charisma and the aura of moral rectitude around him, is always going to overshadow President Diomaye Faye. Yeah. This is it's a fact. It is for him now to step back and choose the most helpful role to their movement and for the sake of their movement. Because we have to also give him that respect
as a president.
As a president, and allow him to make the decisions. But this is here again why it's important to attend very urgently to institutional reform, because they are talking about renewal. Yeah. You cannot do renewal in the absence of the laws authorizing it. And I think to a large extent Macky Sall was successful in maneuvering because the laws allowed it. But when it got to the Constitutional Council, that was the end game for him. He was checkmated and he couldn't do anything. And this also brings me back to what I said earlier, that this formula seems to be working. It worked in Ghana for the last 32 years. It's working in Nigeria for the last 25 years or so. So at the end of the day, it is important that succession planning, term limits for leaders across the board to be institutionalized, to make sure that our institutions are manned on merit, and they are manned by people who can actually deliver for the people. This was a people's victory. Nobody can take that away from them. This was a win for democracy. So Usman Sonko, as this Latter-day Saint, you know, the Mandela of our age, must now decide what would be the most effective role I can play to bring about these institutional changes and strengthen the institutions of good governance so that Senegal does not have to revert.
Mr. Mboch, Mr. Ade?
Yeah, I mean, the
Sonko's role?
Yeah, the danger is that he becomes a kind of co-president or seen as the man who's pulling the strings. Yeah. I was just reading before we came on air, DW went out in the streets of Dakar, and all of the people who were Faye supporters said, of course, Sonko is the brains behind all of this. He's the man who will be making the decisions. That's quite dangerous if that is there. And these are supporters, they're not detractors. So if that becomes the narrative, it's no doubt that Sonko is more popular. And let's be honest, 18, 20 months ago, how many of us knew Bassirou Diomaye Faye? Virtually none of us, but we knew Sonko. And the global audience knew Sonko as well. So it's a very, very, the noises so far are that they will work together because it's a joint project that they have to take Senegal onto bigger and better things. I'm not sure it was helped by the fact that at his first press conference, Faye kept referring to him as President Sonko. But hey, you know,
He's the president
of the party, PASTEF, but it's a dissolved party. But anyway, you know, I know, but you know, so you know, it's like, you know, when 1 minute they ask, you know, introduce Monsieur le Président Diomaye Faye, and then he's talking about.
I think for them, once you become a candidate, you are a president.
Yeah,
that's what happens. Yes, exactly. Yes,
yeah. Because I saw all of them on their flyers had President.
President. So much. Yeah.
Yes, for me, really, my focus is on what Diomaye said, the 3 ruptures he wants to enact, if you like, with the former colonial ruler, with what we call the resource curse. Senegal is on the cusp of being a hydrocarbon producer, and with bad governance. So this is what we are going to judge on. Earlier on, you said that one of them named his son after the other?
Diomaye.
Sankara, Compaore. I mean, history is replete with stuff like that.
This is it.
I mean, one is really willing them to win, to succeed, as it were. But for me, unfortunately, experience is holding my feet. So now I'm asking myself, and we do this, we are journalists. So how long before, for instance, even Senegal itself will start to feel disappointed? Isn't that the normal story when expectations are high in really highly complex situations right now? Because now your program, you're going to face the brick face of reality. You know what I mean? So how do you compromise? Because we are told that really in all commerce between nations, it's a trade-off between sovereignty and prosperity. How are they going to balance that? So they face a massive, massive challenge, and the expectations, just looking at the people interviewed afterwards, investing so much hope in this. Oh, how do you manage that? 44-year-old, fantastic, right in the fire. It's a wonderful story, though. Should he manage it, and it will be a wonderful story. It's refreshing.
Yes,
no, I really think it's very proper for all of us to temper expectations. But I think it's also fundamental to realize that a profound, a seismic change of leadership has happened in Senegal. This is a whole generational change. And their orientations, they are more of a millennial generation. Sonko is older than Diomaye by 4 or 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. So all of them are in their 40s, which is the general age for leadership. Barack Obama, John F. Kennedy, you name them. Bill Clinton, of recent memory, Tony Blair. They all came, you know, in their mid-40s and late 40s. So that kind of leadership is different from this patriarchal kind of leadership that Wade exemplified. Where is Senghor's party? It has practically gone. Where is Ablaye Wade's party? It's severely weakened. APR for the last 3-4 years has been part of the Benno Bokk Yakaar coalition. So those of us who do not reflect on our recent history think that things are going to go in the same old way. But things have changed in Senegal. This is a new generation of leaders, and I have no doubt that these rivalries, even among the supporters, that Sonko is the brains behind it. But Sonko himself is bringing everybody to ground that this is our president, and he is me, I am him. Yeah. And that kind of collective leadership, or leadership from behind, like President Obama said, is possible. It's a question of whether the participants, especially the prime protagonists, whether they are committed to that kind of inclusive and collective leadership. And this is what Africa really needs. We don't need these big, political leaders who would be live president or will not would want to give the presidency to their children, or dynastic politics. Senegal has just demonstrated that you can be all of that. Like they said, 18 months ago, who knew Diomaye Faye?
No one.
You would not even bring him in contention.
Yeah, correct.
And here, there is a little of a, there is some kind of a parallel between what happened in the Gambia in 2016 and what happened in Senegal.
Interesting. And top of his agenda is fighting poverty, injustice, and corruption. I mean, we know definitely Sonko and team, they have been making so much claims about some of the corrupt acts in Maki's government. Do you think they'll go after him?
I don't think so. I think they want to move on and get another agenda, because that becomes a distraction. If that is all you're about, then it means that you don't have other policies. There's a lot more you could be doing than that. As we said, they're about to start getting oil and gas, utilizing that.
And they want to renegotiate all those deals.
And we hear that all the time. And the reason it's important is because the promises and the expectations that we keep talking about, lots of youths think lots of jobs are going to come all of a sudden. That's one of the reasons why they voted. Definitely. Where are those jobs coming from? So he will have to manage those expectations, and I don't think they're going to waste their time, because they don't want to get into kind of vindictiveness. Because, you know, in the office, a lot of people who were supposedly FAI supporters, just yesterday, and they're probably watching this, my colleagues, I asked them, why do you support him? What policies? None of them. Tell me one. I said, what's the first line of his manifesto? You know, but they just like the fact that he was young. Yeah. And it was a kind of sweeping away of the old guard. But history has shown us that that's not always a good thing, either here in the Gambia or in other countries.
Mr. Tal, do you think they should just toss everything under the carpet and say, let's move on and forget all that has happened? I mean, they're talking about renegotiating all this oil and whatsoever deals that Maki's government has had with, you know,
that's one of the worst deals any government has signed.
Do you think they should just say, no, in the interest of Senegal, let's just let go and just move on?
No. That is also a recipe for future disasters. But I think it's fundamental that any legal agreement that you have made or you succeed, because the state continues. So we have to be able to manage continuity with change and change with continuity. Now, I think it's fundamental that there is accountability, and I think there is the need, and I think President Wade said it to him, don't get into this vindictive zero-sum game. Let your government be inclusive and come with your project. And this is what President Wade did in the first 7 years of his mandate. He made sure that there were fundamental reforms. When he succeeded beyond his own wildest expectation, this was a man for 40 years, he was seeking the presidency. When he succeeded with the African Renaissance Project and, you know, his global resonance of his projects, he started thinking that, you know, my son should succeed me. And this is where he fell from grace. But it's important that they focus, like they said, on their project, because the opportunities and the resources of Senegal, if they are properly managed, I think Senegal would become a major West African country. Finally,
we're running out of time. Mr. Mboj, finally, I mean, we know the instability on the southern side of Senegal, Casamance. I mean, do you think they will now lay the arms and say, wow, Sonko is from Casamance?
Well, he said he will solve it.
Okay.
But then, you know, presidents make these kind of things when they're coming in or they're campaigning. I can recall Donald Trump saying that on his first day of office he would repeal Obamacare. He came and he left, and Obamacare is still there. So talk is cheap, but it's one that it will be interesting to see, because he has addressed it specifically, and so it will be good to see whether he can solve it, because it needs solving.
We're running out of time, Mr. Mboj, finally.
It's a different dynamic, and possibly, you know, Sonko, there will be goodwill, at least to reach agreement, I think.
Mr. Mboj, Mr. Tal, your final.
I think everything is possible now in Senegal. We have a change of guard. But the Casamance issue has really lost a lot of its sting over time, because I think the Senegalese politics have become very inclusive. And this is thanks to President Wade and Macky Sall. A lot of developments are coming, and a lot of South Senegalese are seeing themselves as part and parcel of the process. So everything is possible, and we pray for Godspeed and great success in the south of Senegal.
So are you helping Jomai to make his first overseas trip to the Gambia?
Well, that's a tradition, and I think it's a beautiful tradition.
Over the river.
Maki was the first.
Over the river.
Maki also did the same. Immediately he was elected.
Even President Ward, I remember very clearly, he even opened the Banjul Magistrate Court when we were very young lawyers, and I mean, I had a nice conversation with him. But I really think Gambia and Senegal, really, we have a new opportunity to show the whole of ECOWAS how our brothers and sisters can relate across territorial boundaries that are artificial in their spirit.
President Barrow should embrace SPY as his counterpart and, for the interest of these two countries. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the program. Mr. Alma Metal, a lawyer and politician, it's always good to have you on such a program. And Mr. Mbuch, it was good to have you on the program. Mr. Ali Drame, head of QTV News, thank you so much for being on the program. Well, viewers, on behalf of everyone here at QTV, we thank you so much for watching this program. Do join us next time. Until then, bye-bye from me and the entire team. Ciao.